So after sharing my first video, my first paranormal story time with you guys, where I shared with you my experiences with sleep paralysis, a lot of you guys showed interest in me sharing a bit more about the paranormal experiences that I've had, because I don't know if you guys can tell by just how this video looks like, but I guess I've been through a lot. I guess I've been through a lot of stuff and it shows. It's not just a face, mama. It's not just a face. So since by the time that I'm filming this, it's almost Halloween time by now, I just figured that I would share with you guys, hands down, what is my most disturbing paranormal experience. Aside, I guess that it goes at the same level as the scariest sleep paralysis experience that I've had. And if you guys haven't watched that video, I will pin it down below, because it's really worth to take a look at this one before listening to that one. But yeah, some of the experiences that I lived in my Australian haunted home were just as disturbing. At that time, a man sat on my bed and fucking stared at me. So I don't know, by the time you'll be watching this, I'm filming and we're in the month of October right now. It's going to be Halloween soon, and so what better time to tell you guys about a spooky, scary story. I always loved ghost stories. Those were my favorite ever since I was a little child, you know, and ever since I was asking for my grandmother to read to me the scary stories in her book. I was always asking for her to read me the same freaking ghost stories all over again, even though I had heard them like a million times. Those stories were always the best for me, and so I guess what's best than to tell a ghost story while we are in October. It's soon to be Halloween, and it's even better when that story comes from someone that you know lived it, right? So all smiling and laughing aside, I guess I'm going to be a bit vulnerable with you guys in this video, because that's still my story that, you know, happened to me. It's something that I take seriously, because back then, at that time, like now I can make jokes about it and I can laugh about it, right? But back then, at that time, it wasn't the type of things I would have laughed about, let's say. It wasn't really the most pleasant chapter of my life back then. And this happened a few years ago. I was around 24 years old, I believe, so I think it's been 4 years now. And I also wanted to mention that in this story, I will sort of change the names as well of the people that were involved in this house as well, because I was living with roommates. So I'm going to change some names to sort of protect those people's privacy and integrity, because, you know, they're part of their story with that home. That belongs to them, right? And today I just want to speak about my experience, my story. That's what this video will be focusing around. So just a quick disclaimer here as well, to say that my comment section will be extra filtered, because I'm doing no jokes about, because yes, sometimes I'm going to be laughing. Yes, sometimes there are some lighter moments about that story, but most of it's really personal. I'm just wearing my heart on my sleeve right now. And so I accept everybody's beliefs, all right? But I have absolutely no energy to debate on whether or not ghosts are real or not, or whether you believe in paranormal or not. That belongs to you as well. You know, everybody has their own spiritual paradigm, and all that I ask is that you respect mine just as I respect yours. So in case some of you don't know me, just a quick introduction. My name is Elizabeth. Everybody call me Ellie. I've been a witchcraft practitioner for several years now, and I do make a living selling tarot readings online. I was introduced to this field because of my peculiar past with death and with the paranormal. And even though I do practice today a form of mediumship / some would call it psychic work maybe, I am very aware that I am not somebody that holds the truth. I am not someone that considers myself special in any way. Spiritual abilities, I believe that we all have them. I just do believe that not everybody are aware of them. That's the only difference. But we all have a sixth sense, you know, we all have an intuition, we all have an instinct, kind of like animals are connected to their own instinct as well. But, you know, I'm not somebody that claims to know the truth. I feel that if we knew what was the truth of what happens in the afterlife, it would be like like the scientific discovery of the whole freaking world. Like everybody would know about it, obviously. But I am part of those, of this collection of souls that is curious about it, right? And that likes to study about it. Because, you know, like I have said in my other paranormal storytime video, I am someone that, yes, is spiritual, but I'm also very, I also really much believe in science. I like to mix science with spirituality together. I don't know why people tend to want to separate the two. To me, it never made sense, because to me, it's really important to remain myself. And to me, being both spiritual and scientific in my own way is like, it's truly my way to keep myself grounded through life, through the human experience that I have, because I don't know everything. And to me, just to remind myself of that, it keeps me humble. And just because we have scientific calculations, you know, to try to explain certain things that are around us through science, I also believe that this can sometimes be like a tiny slice of what we understand, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the whole picture of everything. And one thing that I said as well in my previous paranormal storytime video is that I also admitted that I was someone that actually believes that evil does exist, that negative entities, negative energy, as some people may say, exists. And I totally understand why some people will shut down the door at these things, and why some people don't believe in it, and why some people want to reject this idea out of their belief system or spiritual paradigm. But I guess that to me, I have a different outlook on these things because of the experiences that happened to me in my life, because of my past, because of the ongoing spiritual disturbances I had to cope with and go through. So where to get started? I guess I'm going to start right at the beginning, right, with this story. So I guess that it started, yeah, like I've said, 4 years ago. It was my first time actually living in a different country, you guys. I had actually gotten my work and holiday visa to go work and travel in Australia, and it was my first time doing that. So I guess that already, saying it like that, already the setup is kind of like stressful, right? When it's your first time living in a different country, you have to like almost relearn everything that you know about how the world works back there at your home, and you have to like, you know, get introduced to a whole new set of different laws and different things that you need to get sorted to just, you know, how to get a job, right? And how to like get your first apartment, and what do I need to look after to be legal and all of these stuff. So overall, it was an experience that I absolutely do not regret. And by the way, shout out to all of my Australian friends. Australia was cool. If it wasn't from all of the bad lucks and bad experiences that I've gotten there, and it has absolutely, I think it was just bad luck, like overall, like for sure. I had like a couple of like huge bad lucks with like jobs that I've gotten that were pretty like, long story short, I don't want to like spend too much time on this, but jobs that were kind of like abusive, jobs that wouldn't pay me, you know, jobs that came with certain accommodations, but I spent more money living that freaking accommodation than I would get paid for the work that I've done. Also buying a camper and then losing that camper completely breaking the next day. Like I had like a surge of bad luck. Like I swear, it's kind of like, I don't like to say that because I don't want to throw it out there because I wasn't cursed at all, but I just think that this freaking, you know, this freaking period of my life was definitely cursed at some point. And so it was after all of that surge of bad luck that me and my ex-boyfriend at the time, because we were traveling in pair, I was with my ex-boyfriend back then, after us going through all of that and losing most of our savings, trying to, you know, get through and get ourselves settled in this brand new country, and, you know, getting bad luck after bad luck after bad luck, we were kind of like at the breaking point, kind of like desperate to find a place and to just freaking get by, right? To not end up in a street. It was a pretty stressful period of my life, to tell you the truth. And so I was looking on the internet, you know, we were out of jobs because we were trying to get our second year of visa, working in farms, and that didn't work out as well because that was the job I was telling you about where I was paying more for the accommodation than the actual work I was putting in. So I found this job description online, right? And it sounded so perfect. Because it was a job in a cafe in Tasmania, and the owners were looking for a cook, which, you know, my ex-boyfriend, that's what he had done before. He had been a cook in a lot of restaurants. And they were also looking for a barista. And that's also what I was, you know, very experienced at. That's what I was doing back home before I started traveling. And so we just thought it was the perfect equation. And so I called them, I had an interview on the phone, everything went well. And the next day we were about to take a plane ticket and travel there as soon as possible to take on this job. So it sounded like the perfect fit at the time. So yeah, we arrived in Tasmania. I'm not going to mention the town or the location yet again for like privacy issues. But yeah, we arrived in Tasmania, and a lot of people don't know about that, but Tasmania actually has a pretty dark history behind it. Tasmania seemed like the end of the world for the British, and so they looked at this place like the perfect spot to send criminals over there to sort of like relieve the overcrowded system at the time. And of course, since it was at the end of the world, they would send the heavier criminal cases over there, get exiled in prison there. So Tasmania ended up with some of Australia's most notorious penal settlements. Between 1804 and 1853, more than 70,000 prisoners were shipped there, and they were forcibly transported to Tasmania to work on building, on mining, on pining and farming for the state and also for private landowners. And during my stay in Tasmania, I had a chance to make the famous ghost tour of Port Arthur, which was amazing. This place is said to have some of the strongest history of hauntings in all Australia, and since I'm a fanatic of ghost hunting, I had to go check out that place. And it's so funny because not much happened to me over there, but everything happened to me back home, right? So it's kind of like, sometimes I'm wondering if I have been seeking this, sort of like, you know, did that double flip side where instead it came at me, those activities came at me. I mean, I'm just speculating here, but Port Arthur was definitely a very heavy energetic space. It was definitely eerie, it was definitely spooky, and it was definitely the history behind it was so heavy, so dark. The energy in there was so dense. And so does Tasmania's history would have anything to do with what happened to me? I guess it's up for everyone's interpretation. I guess I'm not close to it. Maybe, you know, maybe it has a link. Who am I to know? It's a question I'm still asking myself sometimes. And, you know, nothing much happened in Port Arthur as I remember, besides that it was super eerie and, you know, the energy there was very dense. It was hard to breathe almost, you know, as oppressing as it was. But there was something though that happened that was quite weird. And I guess that would be the warm-up story because as we were driving back from the ghost tour in Port Arthur, it was in the middle of the night, it was dark outside, and Australia is kind of like Canada in a sense, because where I come from in Canada, all the cities are very far away from each other, and so you have to drive a good while where there's like a bunch of nothing, right? It's like you drive and it's nothing for like hours straight. You're just like in the middle of the forest and it's pitch black. And so I'm kind of used to that, I guess. But Australia is pretty much settled in the same way. Like cities are pretty far away from each other. And so we were driving back home. It wasn't in the middle of nowhere. It was in the middle of like the forest. It was like pitch black. You couldn't see anything besides like the light of the car that we were making. And I don't know why, I don't know how it started, but me and my ex-boyfriend I was driving, we started having an argument about something, and I don't even remember what the argument was about. Like, I'm pretty sure that it must have been very insignificant because like I've never been the type to argue with my friends or with my boyfriends. I've never been this type of person. Like, well, I mean, you get into arguments once in a while, right? But getting into like heated fights, like that's not my jazz. Like, I don't do that, right? And I don't think that it was back then at the time, it wasn't my ex-boyfriend's style either. But we started to get into a pretty heated argument. And it was in the middle of the night, we're in the middle of the forest, and then all of a sudden, as we were driving and the argument was like sort of escalating for some reason, we were driving back from Port Arthur, right? And then we stopped the conversation, we stopped the argument to say like, oh, look at that, that's kind of like creepy, because like in the middle of nowhere, all that we could see was the light of our car and this old chapel, like a very old, small chapel in the middle of the field. And it was all lit up completely. Like you could see the structure completely. And it was like lit in that sort of like yellowish light, almost like they were like projectors on it. And as soon as we said that, oh, look at this, that's kind of eerie, that's kind of creepy, all the lights went out and the chapel just disappeared, like it was never there. And that was surely like, I mean, maybe that there were projectors, and maybe that it just happened as a coincidence that as we drove by, the projector just, you know, stopped lighting, I guess. You know, you could say that, but it was just still a very weird, creepy coincidence if it was one, right? And that couldn't mean that I brought something back home that night with me. I don't fucking know, you guys. Like, you know, like so many different possibilities, right? So many different speculations at that point. But I remember that this moment really marked me. Like, that was something creepy, that was something weird. And I don't know why, as soon as we came back from Port Arthur, we started having this argument, and, you know, we started getting very, like, irritated towards one another, like, weirdly enough. And so, yeah, so that was a weird experience. But as I moved in Tasmania, you know, I was working, so we were working at this cafe, right? And we had an accommodation with that job. You know, the owner of the cafe was renting for us a small house in the same town for us and the other employees, which we were working with a couple from Scotland. So we were two couples living together, and it was so, the dynamic about this couple was amazing though, because it's like we befriended each other, and so it was nice. It was just like you were living in a house with your friends, right? And so if it wasn't from the whole setting, from the job and from what happened inside of the home, you would have think that it would have been a pretty great experience, right? But I guess I have to also specify, that because I think that it does play into account, okay? And I'm not going to deny that. But what happened at my job was already pretty actually stressful, and it placed a lot of pressure on me and my ex-boyfriend at the time. And the owners of this job were pretty abusive towards us, I won't lie. So I guess that it added up to the stress, the pressure, the negativity, I guess, of the whole experience, because I didn't want to spend more time than I needed to at that job. And as well, I didn't want to spend too much time at my home because it was too weird. The vibe there was not something that I liked. So I was spending most of my time outside, walking outside on the beach or something like that, music in my ears, and trying to pass the time and just go back at home if there were people in there. You know, if my friends weren't at work at the cafe and there was someone else in the home, then I would chill inside of the home. But otherwise, I will always be outside. I would refuse to stay in that freaking creepy house by myself. Because, okay, I have to describe you that home. It was pretty odd. Like, the aesthetic of that home was it was like nothing. It's something you rarely see, right? Because it was like the aesthetic inside of the home was like stuck in the 70s. And not the good parts of the 70s. Like, I think it was like the worst part of the 70s with the 70s, like the freaking brownish, orangey rug, you know, like rug everywhere, pastel bathroom. I mean, that pastel bathroom was pretty rad though. Yeah, I love that. I dig that pastel bathroom though. It was sweet. But then, oh yeah, another thing that was like so weird and creepy was like there was like a window to our bedroom, like a bedroom window. And the bedroom window at the door was kind of like a blurred glass. So, you know, it looked like something out of an asylum. So we kind of made jokes about it, right? We kept making jokes about it, like, oh, I'm going back into like the freaking bedroom of the crazies. It was just like the freaking blurred glass, and it was just like so cold, very creepy. I was like, that's a no-no. Like putting like a window like that on my bedroom door is a big no-no. Like, I don't know who made that choice. Like, I don't know which mood that person was into when they decided to do that, but mistakes were made, friend, mistakes were made. And so, yeah, so the aesthetic was kind of stuck in the 70s. And so it was pretty odd to see that. And as well, inside of the home, there wasn't a lot of light. Like, there wasn't much windows, just a couple of them. So, you know, there wasn't a lot of natural light inside of the home. And so I guess that it added to that feeling of like, it's always kind of dark in here. And as well, it was always cold, which is odd, you know? In the middle of this, I know that Tasmania is a bit, you know, colder than the rest of Australia, but we were in the middle of the summer here, right? And so it was 30 Celsius outside, right? Like back at my home. And so there was no reason for the inside of the home to feel cold, but it always sort of felt colder, like very humid. It kind of felt like you were living in a basement. It really felt like that. And it wasn't a basement. It was like just a straight first floor house, right? No second floor, no basement, no attic, just like a freaking bungalow. Like, it was really it. And outside it was odd too, because like I guess the land that the home was situated on, it was like the grass was not cut, and so it was just like not straw, but you know, the grass was long at some spot, and then at other spots of the land it was like just dirt, just literal dirt, like no grass or anything. So I thought it was already pretty odd. Like, I guess that the owner of the cafe, she rented that spot because it was pretty cheap. And at first I thought that it was pretty sweet, right? Because it was the first time I was living, like renting a home like that. And I just thought, oh, all of that space, all for us, you know, it's quite cool. You have no neighbors to worry about, so you can just do your own thing. But yeah, we quickly started, like us and our roommates, we quickly started to make jokes about that home because it felt cold, it felt creepy, it felt eerie on the inside. But we didn't make much about it. It was just like the vibe of the place, right? We just didn't like it. And so we joked about it, and it stayed that way for a little before the activity actually started to pick up. And I guess how it started to pick up was with the connected dreams that me and my roommates started to have together, like psychically connected dreams. That's so fucked up saying it like that. I know that it sounds so weird, but bear with me. Like, I never experienced that before with anyone else in any other places. And in that home, it always happened. Like almost every week we had connected dreams, me and my roommates. And I guess I've always been someone that really connected strongly to the spiritual realm through my dreams. That's why I feel that it's very important to watch my other video about my sleep paralysis experiences, because I feel that when I sleep, it's kind of like spiritual experiences tend to pick up the most. And I tend to get them a lot. When there's something going on around me energetically, I tend to find. And in that home, I had the craziest, most vivid, scary nightmares and sleep paralysis experiences. So, first connected dream that we've ever had, I believe it was like 2 days after we moved into the home. Like, it was like as fast as that. So I was making this dream, all right? I was dreaming that me and my boyfriend at the time, we were tied in front of a 18-wheelers, and the 18-wheelers was driving super fast on the highway, and we were tied to the 18-wheelers. And I was looking at my ex-boyfriend, I was like, honey, like, we're going to die. And he was looking back at me and he was like, I know this is our time to go now. And we told each other, you know, I love you. You know, I'm glad that I get to depart with you. And it was a very emotional moment that we had on that freaking 18-wheeler somehow. And then the 18-wheelers crashed inside of the wall. And I guess I just woke up like in a flash. And that dream didn't feel like a dream. Like, it was vivid. It was as real as you and I. Like, the fear that I felt, the conversations that I've had in my last moments with my ex-boyfriend, it felt real. It felt like I've lived it. And I felt so emotional when I woke up that when he woke up next to me, I had to tell him about it. And I was very upset. I was very emotional. I was like, we were telling each other that we were going to die. We were telling our goodbyes. And to me, it felt almost like an omen. And I'm not always feeling this way with my dreams. That time, it felt like a true freaking omen. It was so odd. And I was so disturbed by that dream that when we went in the kitchen, I started to make coffee, and my roommate, let's call her Catherine. Catherine was sitting on the table and she was like, hey, slept tight? And I told her, I was like, well, you know, I've made this very vivid nightmare that felt so real, like, and she was like, well, tell me about it. I've made a nightmare too, you know, tonight. And I was like, really? And I told her, well, I'll tell you mine, and after that you tell me yours. And she was like, okay. And so I tell her, like, me and my boyfriend, we were like tied on this 18-wheelers. I was driving super fast and we crashed into a wall, right? And we were telling our goodbyes and it felt so real and blah, blah, blah. And then she was just like looking at me like her eyes just wide open, like her jaw was almost like about to drop on the floor. And she was like, Ellie, like, you know the nightmare I've done last night? I was driving an 18-wheeler and I crashed into a wall. And I was like, what the fuck? That was the most what the fuck moment of my life when she told me that, because that girl, like, we were friends, all right, but she was not like me in a sense that she was really skeptical, very like down to earth. Her and her boyfriend, you know, both of them were very like skeptical people, like, no, like, you know, very like shut that down, right? We don't talk about it. We don't, I know, right? And so I told her that, like, the day before that, before I made that dream, I already told them that I didn't feel the vibe of that home, right? And although we were making jokes about it, and they were like, yeah, but you know, let's not make a big deal about it. Like, it's just a home, right? It's just a home. And I was like, yeah, okay. But then telling that was super strange. That was super strange that she happened to have made the same nightmare, but it was role reversed, right? She was driving the 18-wheelers and she was crashing inside of the wall, and I was tied with my boyfriend on front of that 18-wheelers, and we died in that crash. So it was so strange. And we agreed with each other that this was a strange occurrence, all right? And we just, like, I guess we just tried to make it more lighthearted, and we just, you know, came to the conclusion that maybe we had been psychically linked for that dream, I guess. So we left it at there. But then the vivid nightmares kept happening. And I remember that one nightmare that kept repeating itself, right? It was probably the only nightmare that came back, you know, every few nights. And the first time I've made that nightmare, I was sleep paralyzing, I believe, because I was outside of I felt like I was dreaming. I was in my bedroom, lights were out, right? and I could see like everything that was happening beside me. I was like lying in my bed, but I was like kind of like outside of my body, so I could kind of like experience the room. So it's kind of like I dreamed that I was asleep in the same bed I was dreaming in. That's weird. I hope you get it. Makes sense in my mind. I hope you follow me here. So I'm making this dream, right? I'm sleeping in my bed and I'm waking up, and right next to me in a dark room. And now this is not going to sound like the most terrible haunting story of all time, all right? Because in that dream, I was having a wet dream, all right? Like I'm not gonna try to make it cute. Like there's no way to make it sound cute. I mean, this happens to the best of us, all right? I was making a wet dream, god damn it. So yeah, I was having this wet dream where I was like just I was in the same bed, I was in the same bedroom, all lights were out, we were in the middle of the night, but all of a sudden, there was like this kind of like hot, you know, mid-30s guy that was like next to my bed. And in that dream, I felt connected to that guy. I felt like we knew each other. I felt very attracted to him in my dream. And I guess that thing started like heating up, and we like started hooking up with each other, I guess, in the bed I was sleeping in. And you know, everything starts well, right? So it's like, oh, you know, and I'm telling you that right now, and you're probably going to be like, well, ghosts aren't that bad. Well, wait a minute. Things started to get heated, and as we are making out, he starts to have this weird, crazy obsession where he starts to like, you know, like hold me very like too strong to where it hurts me. He starts putting his hands around my neck and like choking me, right? So he starts to like choke me. I'm almost about to pass out, and then he releases and I come back and he chokes me back again. Finally, in that dream, he ends up completely choking me dead. And I woke up from that dream, and I guess I felt guilty and a bit embarrassed. Like I didn't want to tell my ex-boyfriend about it because I didn't want him to think that I was like, you know, how do you tell that to your boyfriend? Like I dreamed that I was cheating on you, you know? Like it's not something that you want to say to your partner. And it was just a dream. Like I loved my boyfriend at that time, right? But I don't know why in that dream, it's like I knew this guy, right? I knew this guy, and I felt it. Like in that dream, this guy was my lover in some sense. And this dream kept happening very often. And in every time, I had the physical sensations of that dream. You know, the physical sensations, almost like someone was really touching me. I was really having those experiences with someone else, right? And so this man started visiting me in many of those dreams where I was in my bed. But the other times, after that first wet dream happened, the other times it didn't start pleasant. The other times it was literally getting on me, forcing himself on me and like raping me. And I could feel everything. And it was horrible. It was the worst nightmares that a person can have. It kept happening over and over again. And the pain, like it's so like, I feel so like, I feel embarrassed like telling you guys about that, because I work with many people, right, who had sexual assault. I never had sexual assault in my own life. I never dealt with that. I dealt with other kinds of stuff, but not this, right? But I guess that in those dreams, I had the glimpse, like a slight glimpse of what it might be to like a victim of rape. And I guess it changed my outlook on this, but I kept having those nightmares. But the most shocking part of those nightmares is that my boyfriend that was next to me, he started sharing with me some pretty disturbing dreams that he had as well. And he shared with me that he had nightmares of me being raped right next to him inside of the bed. and he couldn't move. He couldn't help me. He couldn't do anything. He dreamed of me being raped next to him in the bed. And I don't remember if he dreamed of that the same night that I was actually dreaming of being raped by that man. But anyways, that's still a dream that I felt was connected to mine, which was so odd, right? And another very odd thing is that, let's call him Steve, all right? Steve, the boyfriend of Catherine, right, the Scottish couple, he started telling me like, man, I have like such freaking like odd nightmares like these days. I keep dreaming that that Catherine is being raped in our bed, and like I enter the home and it's like I enter the home, I enter the bedroom, and there's like these bunch of guys all after Catherine. And it's like, I'm not strong enough. Like whatever I do to try to get these guys away, like I can't. They always end up beating me down, right? And I was like, man, this is fucked up. I started telling him about like my boyfriend's nightmares, which were similar, right? He was dreaming that I was being raped, and then Steve was dreaming that Catherine kept being raped in their bed. And so it was so fucked up already. And then, guess that aside from those dreams, things started to get physical inside of the home. But it started to get physical, like, it's so odd, okay? Because like, you would think that living inside of a haunted home is pretty obvious, you know, like in those movies where something like incredible happens to you and you're so scared and you want to get away right away. And you know, like, you know how you watch like those horror movies that are so cliche, where like the family is moving inside of a haunted home, that crazy thing happens, right? And everybody is like trying to rationalize things, and it's so not logical how they're trying to rationalize it. And it's like, man, get out of that freaking joint. And it's like, it's not like that. Okay, like I kept my head on my shoulders the whole entire time, I'm telling you. And it's more, I feel like it's more subtle than that. I feel like, at least my experience, I'm not going to speak for everybody who's had like experiences inside of haunted homes, but my experience inside of that haunted home was very subtle. It was like, you will always wonder if what you had just experienced was real. Right? Kind of like what we dream, like what I experienced in my dreams. It's like, I know I was dreaming. It's weird that everybody was connected to my dreams and I was connected to everybody's dreams under that roof. But, you know, you can still say that, you know, it was a dream, right? So things started to get physical inside of the home, but it was subtle. It was like, I always felt me and Catherine, especially, not the guys, but me and Catherine, we felt constantly touched, poked, rubbed on our skin. And it's always subtle, right? It's always like, and you will always like be like, like I thought that someone was just behind me and just like rubbing. I thought that it was my boyfriend maybe coming up from behind me and just rubbing my shoulder, but no, it was not. And so we started experiencing that more and more. And that's when I started to distance myself from the house more and more. And I stopped wanting to talk about it with my roommates because me and Catherine, we told each other that. But I guess that since she was very, she was a bit more close to, you know, talking more about it, because I guess that she never told me, but maybe that she thought that, you know, talking about it would entertain him more, maybe, and I completely respect that. But I just started to distance myself and spend more time outside of the home because I felt like a bit alone in this. But one thing that I absolutely enjoyed doing in that home though, however, was having baths. Because in the pastel bathroom, there was like this pastel turquoise bath. Yeah, it was a turquoise bath, yeah. And it was pretty big and it was so nice. And I love taking baths, you guys. Like I love, like water is my element, all right? I'm always in water. So I was just like, I enjoyed taking baths in that home. But after that one experience where I felt something rubbing my thigh as I was in the bath, that was the last time I've been in there. I was like, there's no way I'm going back inside of that bath again. Like, I felt it, like it was very intrusive. Like, I constantly felt like there was this energy that was intrusive and oppressive over, especially me and Catherine. Like, we were always something that poked us, touched us. It's like aggressive, right? It's like at some point it just drives you crazy, because you're always like wondering, was that real? Am I becoming nuts? Right? I was literally wondering if my brain was going nuts, and trying to find like all of these like, you know, subtle like things that would happen, change of temperature and change of like, you know, these skin sensations that I was having. I was always wondering if it was, you know, related to that man I kept seeing inside of my dream. And one day, the physical things that happened started to escalate again. It became worse. One of these mornings, my ex-partner, my ex-boyfriend, woke up with scratches all around his back. You know, like in the freaking movies. It was out of a movie. But, you know, again, it was subtle. It was not like, you know, like freaking claws and like all bloody and like, ah! You know, it was like nothing like that. It wasn't like skin shred open, like in the you know, like in the freaking Exorcist or anything like that. Like, it was subtle. It was like someone had scratched him with fingernails, but too hard. So it was like kind of like a inflammatory kind of, it was like a, you know, a deep red, but it wasn't bloody, right? It looked like scratches, like someone had like literally scratched his back, but way too hard at the same spots, right? And it almost as well looked like a cat, right? Like when you get like these cat scratches, right? Kind of small, but it's still visible. It's still there. Like, I took a picture even, and if I can find that picture in my old phones, because I'm not sure that my old phone still works, but if I can find that picture back in my gallery, you guys, I will link it in this video. I will probably show it here. I hope that I can find it back. But I took a picture of that and I showed like people about it, and it's, you can see like visible like scratches, like someone scratched too hard, but it's in places in his back. It looked fresh, you know, it looked fresh. He woke up with that, and it was in places on his back that are like almost impossible to reach. So I was like, you know, I did not do this to you. You did not do this to you. Like, how could you? Like, it's impossible that you reach those places in your back and just like make a perfect scratch with like claw marks and stuff. So that's where we started, like, me and my ex-boyfriend, we said like, there's definitely something inside of that home now. Like, it's not our imagination. We have like proof here. And then the next days after the scratches, it was bruises. He started waking up with these like weird little bruises everywhere, all over his body. And it was like, you know, again, it's not like big bruises, like, you know, you need to go to the hospital, obviously, but it was like small, like little bruises. And it's just like, you know, I never get bruising. So it's like, it was just odd. You know, it was just odd. Like, we were looking at these marks that were starting to appear on this skin. So it was so weird, because it was like, man, it's like it's attacking him. Like, it's attacking the guys. And then for the girls, it's kind of like it's sexually like aggressing us. Like, I was like, what the hell is this thing? You know, it keeps touching us girls. It keeps becoming like more physically aggressive towards guys. Like, what is going on? And then one day it started to get more physical with me as well. And that one time where I got very scared. I'm not someone that gets easily scared, you guys, by the way. Like, unless I experience something that is undeniably like out of this world, like scary paranormal, like it happened like in this home, in my, you know, like my sleep paralysis videos. Besides that, like, I'm very tough to scare, and I had like paranormal experiences before that didn't scare me, okay? But this time I got scared is when I had just gotten off from work. I had finished work earlier than everyone, and so I was like, God damn it, gotten to spend time at home, right? And I was doing the dishes all by myself. My roommates and my boyfriend were still working at the cafe shop, so I was just alone in the home doing the dishes. And then suddenly I was doing the dishes, and I can't explain. I wish I could explain why, how, but it's like I've been pushed against the counter, but pushed strong enough that I completely lost my balance. Like I was completely thrown against the counter and I just fell. And the dishes just fell back in the sink. And that time I was so scared. I paralyzed. My shock was not even to run away, I just paralyzed. And then I hear the door open, and it was my boyfriend coming back from work. And he was like, hey, na na na. And he saw me on the floor and he was like, what happened? Are you okay? Like, did you hurt yourself or what's going on? And I told him, like, I don't like this. I've been pushed. We need to move. No, so wild, because like, I used to be one of those people that would like judge people in the you know, like in their stories, just be like, why didn't you move in that haunted place? Like if you were so scared and stuff like that. But you've got to understand that people who go through things like that, they think about it, okay? I thought about moving every single week, but because I didn't have the money, I was stuck in that place. Because we had lost our cash and all of those other like shitty job experiences we had in Australia. Before we moved to that place, we were out of cash, zero. Like, a lot of people don't know what's the panic of, like, you don't know if you're going to like make it another week. Like, you don't know if you're going to be able to like buy your groceries and like, you know, just move out of that place. Like, sometimes I was crying and I just wanted to go back home. And I was like, I want to see my family, I want to see my friends, but I'm stuck here. I don't even have enough for a plane ticket out, right? And so I needed to keep going at this. I needed to suck it in and keep working to at least get a little bit of money so I could be out of this place for good. And that's what we've done. But those experiences that I'm telling you guys about, it happened while we were like zero, right? Flatline, like zero and a negative in our bank account. Okay, I was in debt. It's very freaky. It's not like I could just move from there and like leave this place and bye-bye and, you know, try to find the time to get myself a new job in a new place, right? It wasn't like that. It was more complicated than that. I didn't have the cash to do that back then. So I had to like cope with this reality and sort of like make myself a stronger shell, I guess, to not be so affected by what was happening inside of that home. And that's why I would spend as much time as I could outside of it when I could. But I guess the final straw, that was the final straw, when I've been pushed against the counter. And my boyfriend agreed. He was like, that's like this, like, what could it do more, right? If it attacked you like that, it pushed you like that against the counter, what more could it do? Starting now, right? And it's so strange because the next following days, I think it was like the next day or 2 days after, like not long after that event, my boyfriend's friend, who is a medium, texted my ex-boyfriend, and they hadn't been speaking in a while, okay, but he texted him and he said, I feel there's something inside of your home. I feel the need to tell you that there's a middle-aged man inside of your home who has raped and murdered multiple women. And he said, this thing, the energy there is violent. I don't like it. You guys need to go out of this home. And man, how could he have known that? How could he have known that? I wasn't into like the mediumship space back then, by the way. So I was looking at it. I was like, what the hell? This guy texted you and he said like, that makes so much sense. What he said makes so much sense with the experiences that we've had. And he said, and he texted my boyfriend and he said, you know, he abused women, he murdered women, and he doesn't like the guys in that home. He doesn't like that there are men inside of that home besides him. And that gave me goosebumps. That was freaky when he said that, because, you know, it would explain the scratches, the bruising on my boyfriend, why, you know, I don't know, like, the entirety of the experiences that happened with the fictive Steve. Let's call him Steve. I don't know the entirety of his story, but I know that in his dreams he was trying to get scared by men, bigger men that were trying to like overpower him. So that was explaining everything. So we told the medium friend of my ex-boyfriend, we told him, you know, well, we cannot get out of the home right now, but we will be able soon, you know, after we get like 2 more paychecks. So, you know, is there anything you can do to maybe help us? And he was like, all right, well, I'm going to try to perform a distance cleansing for you guys, but I will also suggest that you guys cleanse the home. And since I was already into witchcraft a lot back then, I decided to perform a cleansing ritual as well while he was doing the distance cleansing. So I did a cleansing, I saged the entire home and stuff like that, but it still didn't feel right. Something didn't feel right still. And I went to sleep that night and I had the craziest, wildest horror freak show that happened to me in my dreams. And I will call that the final battle because that was literally the final battle, you guys. It was like the great climax. The freaking hell of a story that felt like a movie. I dreamed that I was in a dormitory of a hostel, because since we were travelers, me and my boyfriend back then, we were doing a lot of hostels, right? All of the time. And I shared with my boyfriend how I was getting tired of that lifestyle a little, because like you never get your privacy when you're living in a dorm room for so long, because you've got to understand, you guys, I've been traveling back then. I had been traveling ever since I was like 19 years old, right? So I had no home. My home was like the world. My home was like dorms like that, right? But I was kind of like getting a bit tired of the lifestyle back at the time, because I felt like I never had my space. I felt like I never could be in my own energy, right? You're always in a shared bedroom, always in shared bathrooms. You never have your own, you know, spot. And I was just like craving that, right? And I was tired a little bit of that. And I guess that in my nightmare, I guess that these men that kept coming back in my nightmares picked up on the fact that I was very done with dorms. So in that nightmare I'm telling you about, I was in a bunk bed bedroom dormitory. There was 20 beds all around me, and they were all empty. They were all empty beds besides mine. I was in one of those 20 beds, and I was on top of, like, you know, like bunk beds, there's like one underneath, there's one on top. I was on top of one, and I could see the room. It was all dark, like it was in the middle of the night. I had woken up there, okay? I woke up in my dorm bed, and I'm in that empty room that is all dark, you know, all of these, I can just see the light, like the light of the moon go past the window of the dormitory, and so I see that all these beds are empty besides mine. And suddenly, the door opens, the door of the dormitory opens. And my dog, my little dog, Zed, that was back home in Canada back then, enters the room. And that's one thing as well that I was starting to miss when I was in Australia, is that my dog was getting old. My dog is like 17 years old today, you guys. He's still alive. But back then he was still getting old, right? We were starting to get old. And so I was like, you know, every year I was thinking maybe it's the last year that I'm going to see him alive, and maybe I'm going to miss him, right? Maybe he's going to pass away, or something's going to happen with him, and I'm so far away from home, I'm not going to be able to be there for his burial, for you know, to be there with him at his time of passing. That was one big fear that I was coping with while I was in Australia, because like that's my little dog has been there with me when I had been abandoned when I was just 11 or 12 years old, and he had been there in my life my whole entire life, right? And so he was my biggest therapist, he was my best friend, and I missed him dearly. So in that nightmare, the door opens and my little dog comes in. It was Zed, and he sees me and he's all excited to see me, and I started to cry because I missed him so much. Like I was so happy to see him here, because like back at that time in Tasmania, it was like a very shitty period of my life. Like everything was going wrong with like my job, and me and my ex-boyfriend were starting to have like these bunch of random arguments. Ever since it all started, we started arguing more and more often together, because he really wanted to leave this place, but we had no money, and so it really affected us emotionally and psychologically to be stuck there. And I was holding on to the thought every day that I was going to be able to get out of that freaking place and see my family again, see my dog again. So anyway, sorry for getting emotional. I have like to take a break here. Anyway, my little dog enters the home, and the home enters the dorm in my dream. And I'm so happy to see him here. So I go down my bunk bed and I hold him in my arm, and I pick him up in my bunk bed with me, and I cuddle him. I don't want to let him go, and I fall asleep with him. And then I wake up in the middle of the night, again in that dream, okay? I'm still in the dream, you guys. I wake up, and he's in my arms, and he doesn't move. And he's all cold and stiff. And I try to wake him up, he won't wake up. And suddenly, his jaw, his mouth started to like do these crazy like little movements, like he was still alive. And so it was like, Zed, you're still alive, like wake up. And suddenly his mouth started to open, like slowly, and then all of these spiders started to come out of his mouth and cover his entire body and start to crawl on me. And I was freaking out, because a lot of you some of you don't know it, but I have a phobia about spiders. And you know, phobia is very different than fear, you guys, because like I've said, I'm like a phobia is not like, I know that the spider is not going to hurt me, all right? And I actually kind of love spiders, like I find them cool. That's the worst part of it. But it's like, it's a phobia, like in the sense that I get this physical aversion to spiders. Like my physical body has this traumatic response almost, so it overcomes me, it's stronger than me. It's not something that I can just like emotionally or mentally control, all right? So I felt the need to specify that. And so the spiders started to crawl all over, like outside of his body, his dead body, and all over me. And then I start panicking, and I start like trying to brush them off from me. And then suddenly, as I'm on top of the bunk bed and against the wall like this, I start seeing these hands coming out from like underneath me, on top of the bunk bed, with long, it was like, how did it look like? It was like black hands, very long pointy fingers. It almost like, you know, like the Grinch, you know, the Grinch, his fingers like hairy and like pointy. It looked exactly like that, but in black, not in green. I started seeing these hands coming up on the top, trying to like reach out to me. And suddenly it all clicked. because that's something that I can do as well, you guys. I lucid dream a lot. And so if those of you don't know what lucid dreaming is all about, it's when you become aware that you're in a dream and you can start to control your dreams, right? But this dream was not just a usual dream. It was like, I felt like it was like, it felt like a astral traveling type of shit. Like it felt like I was really having an experience here. It didn't feel like a normal dream. It felt consistent throughout it, so real, so vivid. And so I started getting aware, not that I was dreaming, because I knew I was dreaming. When I'm in those experiences, you guys, I know that I'm dreaming, but I cannot leave the dream. So if you've watched my paranormal story time about my sleep paralysis experiences, it's exactly like that. Like, I know that I'm in a dream. I know I'm in another dimension, another reality, but I cannot leave. I cannot wake up myself. I cannot, you know, do anything to get myself out of there like I would like in a normal lucid dreaming. But I started getting aware though that it was this thing, this spirit that was trying to scare me, that was trying to do everything in this nightmare to scare me. It had used all of my worst insecurities, all of what made me uncomfortable, all of my, you know, my phobia, my discomfort with dormitory room, like, you know, the fact that I was so worried about not being able to see my dog ever again, you know, if I would miss him passing in another country while I was away, right? All of that happened in the same dream, and it felt exaggerated, like, and I suddenly got aware of that, and I was like, man, you're trying to scare me. You're trying to fucking scare me. Like, you're throwing at me all these things that make no sense in the same experience, so you're trying to get control over me. And I've immediately thought to myself, that's not going to work. Man, I'm aware. I've told him out loud what he was like trying to grab me with his hands. I know what you're trying to do right now, but you're not scaring me anymore. Go the hell back where you come from. And I started like screaming at this thing. And as soon as I told him that, I know you're trying to scare me, it's not going to work, I woke up. I woke up in my bed. I could leave this horrific experience behind. I could finally wake up from this, finally. And I was in my bed, and I just sat on the bed, and it's like the air around me had lifted. It was like the vibe of the room was entirely different moving forward. And I don't know why, you guys. I can't explain it, but it worked. For a while, it worked. Like, I guess I fought this thing in my freaking nightmare. Like, I guess I fought it, and I've won. And it stopped having this hold over me. And the activities stopped after I had that nightmare. Altogether, we didn't experience anything else anymore. Me and my roommates and my ex-boyfriend. It was such a relief. But at the same time, I also don't know why, you guys, but I feel like what I've done, like the cleansing and everything, like the dream that I've had where I kind of like combated this thing from reaching out to me, I feel like it's not over. Like, I feel like this thing has not left. Like, you know, the air has lifted, and the experience in the home was better moving forward, but I still felt the coldness. I still felt the oppressiveness. I still felt watched. I feel like this thing is still there. I really do. I just think that it made him go dormant for a while. That's what I believe. And regularly, I'm thinking back about that home and what happened inside of that house. I'm thinking about who must be living there today. Are they having those experiences back again? Because I feel like this thing just went in hibernation. I don't think that it permanently left. I still think it's there. I don't know why, can't explain how, but it's a strong feeling. Have you had experiences like that, you guys? I would be very curious to hear about your paranormal stories if you want to leave them down in the comment section down below. share stories with me. I'm very open to anything, and I just love hearing about them. But I'm so glad that I could sit here today and share with you all of that, because it's just relieving, right? It's relieving to just express myself about it and just haunting stories or personal stories. And I feel like it's true what they say, that like by the end, when we pass away, we just become stories to be told. So was that spirit of that young man, was he a criminal? You know, was he like belonging to Port Arthur? Where did he come from? What kind of life he lived? So many questions, right? It's so fascinating. But it's fascinating from a distance while I'm not in that freaking place anymore. That's for sure. Thank you for listening to me. Much love, you guys. Bye bye.